Welcome back to The Deep Dive, brought to you by the Funeral Channel Network. Today, we're stepping into, well, a territory I think every single adult dreads.
Oh, absolutely. It's that moment.
It really is. That moment where you're standing in front of a child, maybe it's your own kid, a niece, a student, and their whole world has just been shattered. They're facing a profound loss. Someone they love is gone.
You're the adult in the room.
Exactly. You're the one who is supposed to have the roadmap, right? And your instinct, your absolute gut level biological imperative is to fix it.
To shield them.
Yes. You want to wrap them in bubble wrap, turn off the lights, and just say everything is fine, nothing bad happened. You want to change the subject, keep things normal, and just pretend the tragedy isn't sitting right there in the living room.
It is the most natural instinct in the world. We see this all the time. There's this idea, a kind of protection paradox. We equate silence with safety.
A protection paradox. I like that.
Yeah. We think if we don't name the monster can't get in the room. If we don't talk about the sadness won't touch them.
But today, we are unpacking a set of sources that essentially say, stop. That instinct, while it's coming from a place of deep love, might actually be doing the exact opposite of what the child needs.
It's a huge blind spot for so many well-meaning parents and caregivers.
It is. So we are doing a serious, comprehensive deep dive today into a powerful text called Small Hands and Heavy Hearts, Rituals for Children's Grief. And we're also pulling in some really key practical insights from memorial educators, including material from the funeral program site.
Great resources.
Yeah.
Really grounded in practice.
And the core message here is, well, it's fascinating and a little bit scary. Silence doesn't make grief disappear. It just drives it underground.
That's it right there. And what's so fascinating about the research we're looking at today is that it completely reframes the problem. For a child, grief isn't a conversation. I mean, not the way we think of it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you can't just sit a 6-year-old down at the kitchen table and say, so tell me about your 5 stages of grief.
Right. Chuckles. No, that's not going to work.
They don't have the vocabulary. They don't have the cognitive architecture for that kind of abstract talk. So their grief comes out in other ways. It comes out in how they play, how they behave, and often in their silence.
Okay, so if we can't just talk it out like adults might, over a coffee or something, what do we do? And that's where today's theme comes in. We are talking about rituals.
Rituals.
Yes, and I want to be really clear here. We don't mean stiff, formal, wearing black suits kind of rituals. We aren't talking about liturgy.
No, not at all. This is something much more elemental.
Right. We are talking about actionable, tangible things. From jars to gardens to art supplies that act as a container for that grief.
Container's the perfect word. Unlike reassurance, which is just words, they're just floating in the air. A ritual is something you do. It's physical, it's repeatable, and that provides safety and structure when a child's entire world has just been blown apart.
So our mission for this deep dive is to essentially hand over a toolkit. We're going to explore how these specific actionable rituals can transform a child's overwhelming, scary feelings into something they can actually manage.
Something they can hold.
Exactly. We're moving from the idea of protecting them from the reality to empowering them to handle the reality.
Which is a profound shift in mindset for any adult. It changes you from being a shield into being a guide.
Huge distinction. So let's get into it. Before we can even get to the specific rituals, the jars, and the art, we have to understand the terrain. The source material calls it the unique landscape of childhood grief.
Right.
Because kids do not grieve like many adults. And there was one analogy in the reading that, honestly, it blew my mind. The concept of puddle jumping.
It's the perfect visual, isn't it? This is one of the most important things for adults to understand because it causes so much confusion and, frankly, a lot of hurt feelings.
So break it down for us. What is puddle jumping?
Okay, so adults tend to grieve like they're wading into a deep river. We get in, and the current it takes us. We stay in that cold water for a long, long time. It's constant. It's sort of linear. We're sad in the morning, sad at lunch, sad when we go to bed.
Right. It's an immersion, a total immersion in the feeling. But children...
They puddle jump. Exactly. Imagine a child walking down a sidewalk after a rainstorm. They see a puddle of grief. They jump right into the middle of it. They might sob, scream, throw themselves on the floor, or just look visibly devastated. It's incredibly intense.
All-consuming.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then maybe 2 minutes later, 5 minutes later, they jump out of the puddle. They dry off. And they're asking if they can play video games or asking what's for snack or laughing at a cartoon on TV.
And I can see how that would be so incredibly confusing and maybe even hurtful for an adult. You're standing there completely heartbroken, waiting in your river of grief, and the kid is suddenly laughing at SpongeBob.
Right.
You might think, do they not care? Are they in denial? Did they already forget?
Exactly. All those thoughts run through your head. And the source material is emphatic about this. This is completely normal and healthy. It's actually a biological protective mechanism.
A protective mechanism. How so?
A child's nervous system can't handle the sustained, crushing intensity of adult grief. It would literally burn out. It's too much. So they have to dose it, they dip in, feel the intensity, and then they have to dip out to recover. It's not indifference, it's survival.
So if you see a kid engaging in what looks like normal play right after a major loss, that's not them forgetting the person who died. That's just them taking a breath.
Correct. They are recharging their batteries so they can handle the next puddle. And the sources all emphasize this. Do not drag them back into the puddle. If they are playing, let them play. They will find their way back to the grief when they're ready.
Wow. That is such a relief to hear, I think, for any parent. It takes the pressure off to constantly check in and make sure the kid is displaying the right amount of sadness.
There is no right amount. There's just their amount in their own time.
But obviously, a toddler puddle jumps differently than a teenager does. The puddles look differently.
Differently. And that brings us right into the developmental stages of grief. Because the why of their grief, the way they understand it, changes depending on how their brain is built at that moment.
Yeah.
You just cannot treat a toddler's grief the same way you treat a teenager's.
Okay, let's break that down because the notes here were really specific. Starting with the little ones, toddlers and preschoolers, the source says they view death as temporary.
Right. This is the stage of reversibility. To a 3-year-old, gone might mean gone to the store or gone to work. It doesn't mean gone forever.
Their whole world is built on that, isn't it?
It is. You play peekaboo where things vanish and then come right back. They watch cartoons where a character gets flattened by an anvil and then just pops back up totally fine in the next scene. They don't understand the biological permanence of death.
So you might have that heartbreaking conversation where you explain that grandma has died and they cry, but then an hour later they ask, when is grandma coming over for dinner?
Exactly. All the time. And that is not them being difficult or insensitive.
Yeah.
Their brain literally hasn't developed the concept of forever in that biological sense yet. So you have to be very concrete. You can't use euphemisms.
What do you mean, like passed away or went to sleep?
Exactly. Those are the worst. Grandpa went to sleep can make a child terrified of going to bed. We lost grandma might make them think you should go look for her. You have to use clear, simple words. Died. Her body stopped working.
That has to be so hard for the parent to keep explaining that over and over.
It is exhausting. It requires immense patience. You have to be a broken record, gently reinforcing the reality without getting frustrated. It's a marathon.
And then you move to the early elementary years, say 5 to 9 years old, and the landscape shifts again.
It does. Now they start to understand permanence. They knew the person isn't coming back, but they fall into a new trap, a really dangerous one called magical thinking.
This was the part of the research that really scared me, actually. The idea that they might feel responsible for the death.
It's very, very common. You have to remember, at that age, children are fundamentally egocentric, not in a selfish way, but developmentally. They are the center of their own universe.
Their actions control the world.
They believe their thoughts and actions control reality. So if a parent dies, a 7-year-old might connect dots that shouldn't be connected. They might think, I didn't clean my room last week and I made Dad angry and his face got red. And that's why his heart stopped.
Wow. So they are carrying this secret, crushing guilt on top of the sadness. They think they committed a crime.
A terrible one. And because they often don't have the words to express that kind of complex guilt, it comes out as behavior.
Like what?
Anger, regression, bedwetting again, sudden tummy aches, nightmares. They're being crushed by a guilt they can't articulate. They don't know how to ask, did I do this?
So as an adult, you can't just wait for them to bring it up. You have to. You have to be proactive.
You have to proactively absolve them. You have to get ahead of it. You have to say clearly and repeatedly, Daddy died because his heart was sick and it stopped working. Nothing you did, nothing you thought, and nothing you said caused that to happen. You have to break that magical link for them.
And then as they get older, we get to the preteens.
Right. Now they grasp the finality fully. They understand the biological reality. But their emotions are becoming much more complex. You see a lot of anger at the person for leaving, deep anxiety about their own safety.
Like, who will take care of me now?
Exactly. Who will pick me up from school? Am I going to die too? And then, of course, we hit the teenagers.
The teenagers seem like the trickiest group because they look like adults, they talk like adults, so we assume they grieve like adults.
And that's the mistake. They have the intellectual understanding of an adult, but they lack the coping mechanisms. And crucially, the source highlights that teenagers often feel profoundly isolated.
Why is that?
Think about what a teenager's primary developmental job is: to separate from their parents and fit in with their peers. That's individuation. So when a tragedy strikes, their instinct might not be to come to you for a hug. It might be to withdraw into their room.
They lock the door.
They lock the door, and they feel like freaks. Teenagers are obsessed with fitting in, with being normal. Losing a parent or a sibling makes you the grieving kid. It makes you different.
And nobody wants to be different at 15.
Nobody. So they might mask it. They'll pretend they're fine so their friends won't treat them weirdly. They might feel like no one understands them, or they don't want to look weak by crying in front of their friends. It's an incredible burden.
So we have this constantly moving target: puddle jumping, magical thinking, teenage withdrawal. This is why the source argues that rituals are the answer, because no matter what stage they're in, a ritual provides what it calls a continuity anchor.
That's a beautiful phrase, isn't it? A continuity anchor. Because the grief is going to cycle. The sadness will come back. The child will jump back into that puddle. And when they do, the ritual is there waiting for them. It's a familiar, safe place to go with that feeling.
Okay, so let's really unpack the why. Why do these rituals work when just talking often doesn't? The source digs into the psychology here, and the first point is sensory engagement.
This is fundamental. Think about how a child learns about the world. They learn by touching, seeing, smelling, doing.
Not by reading a textbook.
Right. And trauma and deep grief. They often live in the more primitive parts of the brain. The reptilian brain, the limbic system, the parts that handle emotion and survival. Language, logic, that all lives up in the prefrontal cortex. When a child is deep in grief, that logic center is often offline. They can't process a lecture from you.
But they can process holding a rock.
Exactly. A ritual engages the senses. Lighting a candle is visual and warm. Planting a flower involves the feel of dirt and the smell of the earth. Holding a smooth, cool stone in your hand is tactile. It bypasses the part of the brain that needs to formulate complex sentences. It allows the emotion to move through the body physically.
It's almost like if I'm sad and I don't have the word for despondent or abandoned or bereft, I can still put a dark blue stone in a jar and I've expressed it without needing the word.
Precisely.
Okay.
You've given the feeling a shape, a color, a texture. And that leads directly to the second psychological pillar: control and safety.
Okay.
Death is the ultimate loss of control,
Or
especially for a child. Suddenly, their entire world is chaotic.
Yeah.
Adults are crying, the schedule is completely disrupted, someone is gone forever. They feel utterly powerless.
and rituals give that agency back.
Yes. A ritual involves choices. Which color crayon do I use for this drawing? When do I want to put the note in the jar? Where should we plant this tree?
Yeah.
These seem like such small choices to us, but to a grieving child, they are reclaiming a sense of agency in their own life. They're reclaiming their turf from the chaos.
I love that. It's not just, here's a therapy session where I will ask you questions. It's, here is a thing you can do on your terms. And the source also mentions the importance of a low-pressure environment.
This is so critical. If you sit a child down and say, "Tell me how you feel," that is extremely high pressure. They feel like they need to find the right answer.
They might even try to say what they think you want to hear to make you feel better.
Absolutely. They're trying to manage your emotions on top of their own. But a ritual. There is no right or wrong way to fill a memory jar. There's no grade. It normalizes the grief. It makes it a shared, quiet activity rather than a secret burden they have to carry all alone.
Okay, let's get practical. I really want to open up the toolkit. The source, including the material from the funeral program site, lists some really specific, concrete containers of memory. The first one is probably the most well-known, the memory jar.
A classic for a reason. It's simple, it's cheap, and it is incredibly powerful.
Walk us through it. What is it exactly, and why does it work so well?
So conceptually, it's very simple. You take a jar, a box, a bowl, any container will do. And then you decorate it together. That's a key first step. You paint it, put stickers on it, tie a ribbon around it, you make it theirs.
You give them ownership right from the start.
Exactly. And then, over time, you fill it. You fill it with little notes, with drawings, maybe small objects that represent the person who died.
And the key here seems to be the time frame. It's not a one-and-done activity.
Right. There's no deadline. You don't finish the jar on Tuesday. It just
Yeah.
it sits on a shelf. Yeah. Maybe the child puts 3 notes in one day because they're in the puddle, and then nothing for a month. That's the puddle jumping again. The jar is there when they need it. It's patient.
The source outlines some really good, actionable steps. So you get the jar, you decorate it, and then you have prompts. Because I can see a kid freezing up if you just say, write about mom. So what kind of prompts work best?
You want to keep them open-ended, but specific enough to spark a thought. Things like write down a favorite memory or a specific word that reminds you of them. It could be sunshine or cookies or a funny sound they used to make.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, it brings in the senses. Or, and this is a really powerful one, something I wish I could say to them right now, it becomes a sort of mailbox to the beyond, in a way, a safe place to put those unspoken words.
There was a very strict rule for adults mentioned here. I want to highlight this in like neon lights. The source says adults should not correct or interpret the entries.
This is non-negotiable. This is the most important rule of the entire process. If a child writes a note that says, I'm mad at daddy for leaving, or I hate that daddy isn't here for my soccer game,
The instinct is to jump in and say, oh, honey, daddy didn't want to leave.
you cannot do that. You do not say, you shouldn't feel mad. You don't try to explain it away. The feeling just is.
You just let it go in the jar.
You just let it go in the jar. The jar is a judgment-free zone. The second you start editing their grief or trying to fix their feelings, the ritual stops being safe. It stops being theirs. It becomes a performance for you.
That's a tough one for the protective adult, but I totally see why it's necessary. Now, how is the memory box different from the jar? They sound similar.
They do, but the function is slightly different. The jar is usually about creating new things, writing a note, drawing a picture, generating something from inside them. The memory box is more about keeping physical items that already exist.
Like artifacts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Photos, a watch, a letter, a favorite t-shirt that still has their smell, a piece of jewelry, a shell you found together on a beach trip. Tangible things.
So the jar is output, the box is storage.
In a way.
Mm.
But the psychological function of the box is what the source calls controlled access.
Controlled access. Unpack that for us.
Grief can be incredibly overwhelming. Sometimes, seeing a photo of the loved one on the mantelpiece every single second of every day is just too much for a child. It's a constant, painful reminder. It keeps their nervous system on high alert.
Right, there's no break from it.
But a memory box has a lid, and that lid is a brilliant piece of emotional technology.
Because they can close it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The child is in charge. They decide, you know what, I want to feel close to mom today. And they can go and open the box. They can look at the photos, touch the things, smell the perfume, remember? And then when they've had enough, when it gets to be too much, they can close the lid. They can put the box back on the shelf. They can put the grief away for a little while.
That is so empowering. It allows them to dose their own exposure to the memories.
It's puddle jumping with an on-off switch.
Mm.
And co-creating that box, decorating it together, is a great way to bond. It reinforces that agency we talked about. You can say, this is your special place for these memories. You are in charge of it. It teaches them that they can visit the grief without having to live inside it 24/7.
Okay, moving on from containers, let's talk about expression. Segment 4 in the sources covers narrative and artistic expression. We all know stories are important, but the source makes a key distinction about something called narrative integration. What does that mean?
It sounds a bit academic, but the concept is really simple and beautiful. When someone dies, the story of the family breaks. There is a before and there is an after. The timeline is shattered.
Yeah.
Narrative integration is the process of helping the child fit this terrible loss into the ongoing story of their life. It means weaving the memory of the person who died into today and tomorrow, so the story doesn't just stop cold. The person is gone, but their story continues in you.
And the source points out that these stories don't have to be these, like, epic eulogies.
No, and actually the epic grand stories are often less effective for kids. Adults have a tendency to turn the dead into saints. He was the hero. She was perfect.
Right, the never did anything wrong version.
Yeah, and that can actually alienate a child. Because the child remembers that dad yelled at the dog sometimes, or had sneaky feet, or burned the toast. Those human sensory details are the Velcro that memory sticks to. If you polish the memory too much, it becomes slippery and fake, and the child can't connect with it. Kids need the mundane.
Laughs. The stinky feet are important.
The stinky feet are vital. So the prompts are simple. Tell me about the time Uncle Joe dropped the turkey at Thanksgiving. Tell me about how loud Grandma used to sneeze. These things ground the memory in reality and make the person feel real again.
I love that idea of tell me about when. Prompts. It's so simple and inviting.
It is. And another really interesting aspect the source brings up is the idea of allowing creative license. Kids might retell a real story but change the ending. Or they might invent a completely fictional story where the loved one is now a superhero, or where they went to the moon together.
And as an adult, the instinct is to correct them. No, sweetie, you and Grandpa never went to the moon.
But you shouldn't. Don't do it. That's not a lie. It's a wish. It's imagination. They're using fiction to process feelings that are too big for reality. They are resolving their pain through fantasy. So you play along. You lean in. Wow, what was it like on the moon? Was it cold?
This bleeds right into the next part, which is art-based rituals. The source has this incredible line. Grief often appears as color or shape before it becomes language.
Think about that pre-verbal, overwhelmed part of the brain we talked about. Maybe a child feels a red, spiky, hot anger inside them. They don't have the word resentment or injustice, but they can grab a red crayon and scribble aggressively on a page until the paper tears.
And that's a release.
It's a massive release. It's getting the feeling from the inside to the outside, which is why the sources all emphasize process over product.
Process over product, meaning it doesn't matter what it looks like in the end.
Exactly. We are not trying to make a pretty picture for the refrigerator door. We are trying to externalize an internal state.
Right.
Clay is fantastic for this too. It's so tactile. You can pound it, you can smooth it, you can squeeze it, you can reshape it. It's very physical.
And again, that rule about ownership applies. If they create a drawing of their sadness and then they want to tear it up after they make it.
You let them. In fact, sometimes destroying the art is the most therapeutic part of the whole ritual. If they draw the sadness monster and then rip it into 100 tiny pieces, they are symbolically destroying the power the feeling has over them. They're taking control.
Let's step outside now, literally. Segment 5 in our notes talks about living rituals, specifically something like a memorial garden. Now, I feel like this is a very traditional idea, but the source gives it a specific and powerful spin for kids.
The garden is such a powerful metaphor because it introduces the concept of cycles, of life, death, rebirth, seasons. You can try to lecture a kid about the circle of life, and they might just tune you out. But a garden shows them. It teaches them that even when winter comes and everything looks dead and barren,
Life is still happening under the surface.
exactly, life continues underground, and it will come back in the spring. It's a biology lesson that doubles as a profound grief lesson, all without a single word of lecture.
And the key action here seems to be tending.
Yes, if a child feels helpless like they couldn't save their loved one, which is a common feeling, giving them a tangible job gives them purpose. It is your job to water this rose bush that we planted for Grandpa. It allows them to actively care for the memory. It translates love into a physical action.
And I really appreciated the note in the source about scalability. You don't need a sprawling estate and a professional gardener for this.
Not at all. It can be a window box in an apartment, a single succulent on a desk, a resurrection plant that looks dead but comes back to life with water. It's about the intention and the action, not the acreage.
And connected to this idea of time passing is the section on calendar rituals. Anniversaries, birthdays, holidays. These are the days we all dread because the absence feels so loud. The empty chair phenomenon.
The anxiety leading up to those days is usually worse than the day itself. The child is watching the adults, wondering, are we going to pretend nothing is wrong? Is mom going to be crying all day? Am I allowed to be happy and open my presents?
It's so uncertain.
It is. And predictability creates emotional safety. If a child knows, okay, every year on Dad's birthday we make his favorite pancakes and we light this specific candle and we each share one funny story, they don't have to spend the whole day worrying. They know there's a reserved time and a safe place for that grief.
It takes the anxiety out of the anticipation. It gives the day a shape.
Yes. And again, you engage the senses. Make their favorite recipe. Smell is the strongest trigger for memory. It's wired right next to the memory center in the brain. Baking Dad's favorite chocolate chip cookies does more to bring his memory into the room than just looking at a photograph.
This brings us to a really tricky topic, and I'm so glad the source material addressed it head on. Funerals. The big day. There is so much debate about whether children should attend funerals. What do the sources say?
The consensus from the sources we looked at, including the practical advice from the funeral program site, is that exclusion is often more damaging than inclusion.
Really? Because the gut instinct for so many parents is, it's too sad, they shouldn't see that, it's going to be traumatizing.
But children have powerful imaginations. And often what they imagine is happening, if they are left at home with a babysitter while everyone else goes to this mysterious, sad event, is far, far scarier than what is actually happening.
They imagine a horror movie.
They do.
Yeah.
And more than that, If they are left behind, they feel sidelined. They feel like their grief doesn't count, like they aren't a real part of the family's most important moment. Including them validates that their grief is real too.
Okay, but you can't just drop them in without a parachute, right? You can't just drag a 6-year-old to a wake and hope for the best.
No, that would be traumatic. The source calls it the pregame talk, and it is absolutely vital. You have to explain in boring, clinical, step-by-step detail exactly what they will see and hear.
Give us the script. What does that sound like?
It goes something like this. Tomorrow, we will go into a big room. There will be lots of flowers that smell nice. Grandpa will be in a wooden box called a casket. He will look like he is sleeping, but he's not sleeping. His body has stopped working, so he cannot feel anything. Many of the grown-ups will be crying. I might cry. And that's okay. If you want to cry, you can. If you want to bring your toy cars and play quietly on the floor, you can do that too.
You remove the surprise. You remove the fear of the unknown.
Exactly. You demystify it. And then you give them a job, if they want one. This is what the source calls age-appropriate participation.
What would that look like?
For a little one, it could be as simple as lighting a candle with your help, or placing a flower on the casket, or drawing a picture to put on the memorial table. It turns them from a passive, scared observer into an active participant. It gives them a role.
Now, we are living in 2026. We have to talk about digital rituals. Kids live online. My instinct as an older millennial is to say, social media is shallow, but for a teenager...
For a teen, their digital life is their real life. We have to respect that space. An Instagram story dedicated to a friend who died isn't shallow to them. It's a public declaration of love and remembrance. It's their version of a monument.
So the advice isn't to ban the phone.
No, definitely not. But you monitor it. Balance is key. You don't want the grief to only live on a screen. And the internet is, well, it's the internet. It's not always a safe or kind space. So supervision is key. But dismissing digital rituals as not real is a mistake. It's just a different language for connection.
Speaking of things that can go wrong, the source does have a really important section on when rituals aren't enough. Because we don't want to imply that a memory jar is a cure-all.
No, not at all. Grief is messy and complicated. Rituals are powerful tools, but they aren't magic wands. We need to watch for signs that a child is really struggling, that they're going beyond the normal puddle jumping. We're looking for signs of stuckness.
So what are we looking for? What are the red flags?
Things like prolonged withdrawal, not just dipping out for an afternoon, but refusing to leave their room for weeks on end. Intense, crippling anxiety that stops them from going to school because they are terrified you will die if they leave the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or regression that lasts a long time, like a 10-year-old who starts bedwetting again for months. Or persistent, crushing guilt that they can't shake, where they keep saying, it's my fault.
And that's when you call in the pros.
Absolutely. That's when it's time for professional help, like grief counseling or therapy. Rituals can run alongside therapy and be a wonderful support, but they don't replace professional help if a child is truly stuck in trauma.
We're coming toward the end of our deep dive, but we have to touch on what might be the most critical variable in this entire equation, the adult's role. The source says, very plainly, children learn to grieve by watching adults.
This is the oxygen mask principle from the airplane safety talk. You have to put on your own mask first. You cannot help your child grieve if you are pretending you aren't grieving yourself.
You mean being strong for the kids?
Exactly. If an adult hides all their tears, stifles all their sadness, and acts like an emotionless robot because they are trying to be strong, the child learns a very specific and damaging lesson.
They learn that feelings are bad or dangerous.
They learn, oh, we don't do feelings in this house. Feelings are scary. If I cry, I'm weak, or I will upset mom and dad. So they learn to hide their grief too.
That is such a heavy burden for a parent who is already hurting so much, though. To feel like they also have to perform healthy grief perfectly.
It is heavy, but it's also liberating in a way. It means you don't have to be a perfect stoic rock. You just have to be a real human. It is perfectly okay to say, you know what? I'm crying a little bit right now because I miss mommy today.
Yeah.
That gives a child permission to cry too.
It's about healthy vulnerability.
Exactly. You show them that the wave of sadness comes, you get wet, and this is the crucial part, you dry off and you make dinner. You show them that survival is possible. You can feel the feeling and still function.
And the final rule the source mentions, which really feels like it sums the whole philosophy up, is the invitation rule.
This is the golden rule. Rituals must always be invitations, not obligations. You set up the memory jar on the table. You buy the new paints. You invite them to come to the garden with you. But if they say, no, not right now, you respect that. You never, ever force a child to perform grief on your schedule.
So let's bring all of this together. We started with this very human instinct to protect through silence. We've learned that children grieve in puddles, not rivers. We've looked at this amazing toolkit: jars for creating, boxes for keeping, gardens for living, stories for connecting.
And the common thread running through all of it is connection and action. Healing doesn't happen just because time passes. Healing happens because we connect with our memories, with our emotions, and most importantly, with each other.
These rituals seem to transform remembrance. It stops being this static, dusty picture on the wall that we're almost afraid to look at, and it becomes something living, something shared.
And something the child owns. That's the most important part. They are in the driver's seat of their own grief.
For those of you listening who are in the thick of this right now, or who know someone who is, these insights are drawn from that great text, Small Hands and Heavy Hearts, and the practical expertise at the funeral program site. And they both remind us that personalized rituals are absolutely key.
Absolutely. There is no one-size-fits-all solution here. Take these ideas and adapt them. Make them yours. Make them right for your family.
I want to leave you with a thought today. We talked so much about protection at the start, that instinct to shield. But maybe true protection isn't about building a wall around a child to keep the reality of death out. Maybe true protection is handing them a toolkit, a jar, a paintbrush, a shovel, so that when the reality of grief hits, they know they have the power to handle it. They know they aren't helpless.
And know they aren't alone.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us in this deep dive.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time.